There is an invisible power, yet strong enough to move the human soul. A kind of authority that does not lie in voice, in noise, or in eloquent arguments, but lies in silence itself. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Those who know how to be silent will possess a power that the noisy can never have." In a world full of noise where everyone competes to be heard, silence becomes a luxury, a mysterious weapon. Think about it. How many times have you accidentally let impulsive words ruin a relationship? How many times have you wanted to prove yourself right, but the more you spoke, the further you drifted from the truth? Nietzsche did not tell us to remain mute forever. He merely pointed out that when you know how to be silent at the right moment, you are taking control. At that moment, you are no longer reacting to the world, but becoming the one who leads its rhythm. Today's video will take you deep into the philosophy of the power of silence, a journey that helps you discover how silence can change the way others see you, the way you see yourself, and the way you face life. If this is your first time visiting the channel, please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Every week we will open together new perspectives, profound yet practical philosophies, so that you not only understand the world better, but also understand yourself better. In the modern world, where all information, opinions, and emotions are exposed in a hasty manner, silence has almost become a kind of luxury item. We live in an era where attention is a form of currency, and everyone wants to seize it. Yet, at that very moment, silence becomes the thing that breaks the rules, making you stand out without the need for noise. Nietzsche understood that words are a double-edged sword. They can connect, but they can also divide. Many times, silence is not about not knowing what to say, but about choosing not to speak. That is when you realize there are truths that do not need to be spoken to become evident, and there are reactions where the best response is no response at all. Silence is not weakness. On the contrary, it requires immense inner strength. For to remain silent, you must conquer the need to express yourself, restrain impulsiveness, and stand firm under the pressure of surrounding gazes. When you are silent, you are keeping a space in your mind to observe, to understand the situation more deeply before taking action. Nietzsche believed that those who know how to be silent are not drawn into the whirlpool of others. They master their emotions, are not easily provoked, and therefore become unpredictable and difficult to read. In the eyes of the world, that silence creates a zone of mystery, something that humans are instinctively drawn to. That is why silence is not just a state, but also a life strategy, a strategy that prevents you from wasting energy on meaningless things, while channeling all your strength toward the moments that truly matter. Nietzsche once emphasized that silence is not an empty space, but a form of speech, only different in that it is speech without sound. To understand this, imagine you are in a tense debate. The other person continuously bombards you with words, trying every way to make you react. Most of us would be drawn into that battle, responding to every sentence, every word. But if you remain silent, something interesting will happen. Control suddenly shifts to your side. The silence in this situation sends a powerful message. I am not drawn into your game. The other person may feel confused, angry, or even start to doubt themselves. This is the psychological power of silence. It forces the opponent to face themselves. Nietzsche believed that humans are inherently afraid of silence. When confronted with silence, they feel disoriented, as if standing before a mirror reflecting their own inner self. In silence, all external noise disappears, and they are forced to listen to the voice within, something many people try to avoid their entire lives. However, silence also requires subtlety. If you are silent too much or use it at the wrong time, you may be misunderstood as indifferent or weak. Therefore, Nietzsche advised that silence must be accompanied by a strong presence. This means you still maintain eye contact, posture, and confident body language. At that moment, silence becomes an anchor point that others cannot ignore. A real-life example. In business negotiations, successful people often know how to use strategic pauses. They do not answer immediately, but let silence last for a few seconds. This pause creates invisible pressure, causing the other party to reveal more information or make concessions first. Nietzsche would call this the art of control through the absence of sound. It applies not only in debates, but also in daily communication, in love, and in leadership. Because there are messages that only become clear when we stop speaking and start listening. Silence, in Nietzsche's view, is not only a tool of communication, it is also a declaration of inner power. When you choose silence amid countless noises, you are affirming that you are not governed by external agitation. This is a state that Nietzsche regarded as a challenge to the will. Can you stand firm in your own stillness without feeling uneasy? Because for most people, silence is like a vast emptiness they want to fill quickly. They speak continuously, not to convey information, but to hide the restlessness within. At this point, Nietzsche saw that silence becomes a test. The one who can endure silence possesses a kind of strength that others cannot easily subdue. More interestingly, silence has the ability to shape the rhythm of a relationship. When you do not react as others expect, you break the prediction cycle in their minds. This forces them to adjust their approach, and gradually, you become the one who holds the initiative in that interaction. Nietzsche called this the restructuring of power, the process by which one uses stillness to change the psychological balance. However, Nietzsche also warned that silence is not a weapon for manipulation, but a form of self-defense and preservation of mental energy. When you refuse to engage in meaningless arguments, you not only maintain peace for yourself, but also prevent the emotional depletion that is the inevitable consequence of unnecessary conflicts. On a deeper level, silence is also liberating. It allows you to detach yourself from the whirlwind of immediate reactions, opening space to observe, analyze, and choose how to respond wisely. It is in this stillness that intellect and intuition have room to speak, something Nietzsche believed would guide you toward better decisions. According to Nietzsche, silence is not merely the absence of words, but a form of energy consciously directed. The one who knows how to be silent is the one who understands that true power does not lie in occupying every moment of dialogue, but in the ability to choose the time to speak and the time to hold back. In his philosophy, this is an expression of the will to power, a concept that speaks not only of external domination, but also of absolute control over oneself. Nietzsche viewed silence as a subtle strategy, where words become rare and precious because they are used only when truly necessary. Each moment of silence is like a pause in music, not the absence of melody, but an essential part that makes the composition deeper and richer in emotion. In life, this pause adds weight to every word, making the message delivered more powerful and harder to fade away. This is also related to an aspect Nietzsche particularly emphasized: emotional self-control. The one who can remain silent when provoked is not doing so out of weakness or submission, but because they are strong enough not to be drawn into the emotional whirlwind of others. It is a form of freedom. Freedom from the urge to react immediately. Freedom from letting others decide the rhythm of one's mind. Silence, at its highest level, becomes a form of self-assertion without noise. When you do not try to prove anything, do not rush to justify or argue, you are implicitly sending the message: I am strong enough not to need instant validation. This is precisely what Nietzsche saw as a quality of those strong in spirit. They do not chase the gaze of others, but walk in the light of their own. In this understanding, silence is not the absence of communication, but a profound language. A language that only those who are steadfast and confident enough can use effectively. In Nietzsche's philosophy, maintaining distance from the outside world is not an act of avoidance, but a strategy to protect one's integrity. He believed that every person has a mental space, a place that holds their values, principles, and true essence. If too many external elements are allowed to enter, that essence will be diluted, and the individual will gradually lose the center of themselves. Distance here does not only refer to physical space, but mainly to distance in mind and emotion. It is like an invisible boundary that helps you distinguish what is worthy of opening your heart to receive, and what influences need to be kept outside. In this view, distance is a form of mental discipline, where you choose who and what is allowed to influence you. Nietzsche saw the control of this distance as an expression of inner strength. The strong person is not the one who stands in the crowd and lets all streams of opinion sweep them away, but the one who knows when to step back, when to stand still, and observe before acting. This is the way to maintain independence in thought, a core quality to avoid being assimilated into values one does not agree with. What is noteworthy is that this distance does not make a person cold or completely isolated. On the contrary, it allows us to engage with the world more consciously, without being swayed by temporary fluctuations. When you keep your distance, you see things more clearly, recognize the motives behind the actions and words of others, and thus respond in the way that best aligns with your interests and values. On a deeper level, distance is also an act of self-respect, because when you establish boundaries, you are sending the message, my life, my mind, and my energy are things that cannot be casually violated. This is precisely the spirit of self-mastery that Nietzsche valued, living as a complete individual, not letting oneself become a product of external pressure or expectations. Nietzsche believed that once a person finds inner stillness through distance, they will step into an entirely different state of living, a place where external conflicts, judgments, and pressures no longer have as much power to dominate as before. In this state, you no longer need to chase after proving your worth, because you have a deep awareness of that very worth. According to him, true freedom does not lie in doing whatever you want, but in the ability to decide what is worthy of having a place in your life. When the mind is steady, you will no longer be drawn into meaningless cycles of argument or unfounded attacks. Distance is no longer just a protective wall, but has become the space for the mind to breathe and grow. This requires great inner determination, because the outside world always tries to pull you back into its chaos. Nietzsche emphasized that, to maintain such distance, one must practice the ability of self-reflection, looking inward to see what is influencing you and whether those influences are truly necessary. Distance also helps shape a subtle form of power, the power of not reacting immediately. In Nietzsche's philosophy, delaying a reaction is a form of wisdom, because it allows you to choose a response that aligns with your nature and goals, instead of being swept away by instant emotions. That calmness is not indifference, but a form of strength under control. On a deeper level, when you maintain distance, you are also protecting the space for long-term values to be nurtured. Your ideas, principles, and beliefs are not eroded by temporary influences. This is how Nietzsche envisioned a strong individual, not imposed upon by temporary norms, not swayed by collective pressure, but standing firm on their own foundation. In Nietzsche's view, when a person has truly entered a state of inner freedom, every relationship, every choice, and every decision begins to revolve around a single axis: absolute honesty with oneself. He believed that this is the destination most people avoid, because such honesty sometimes requires you to face uncomfortable truths about yourself, about others, and about the world. Keeping distance is not only for protection, but also for self-reflection. In that silence, you are forced to clearly see hidden motives, unconscious habits, and even mental limitations that you had always sought to avoid before. Nietzsche believed that only when a person is brave enough to face the dark side within themselves can they achieve inner unity, where reason, emotion, and action all move toward a common goal. This is not an easy process. Every step deeper into oneself may come with doubt, conflict, and a sense of being lost. But Nietzsche saw in it a form of rebirth, the shedding of each artificial layer that has clung to us over the years, revealing the original core that cannot be replaced. Once you reach that state, you will no longer need to use distance as a protective barrier, because you yourself have become the source of inner strength. At this point, distance becomes natural, like a river choosing its own course without needing to compete or compare with other streams. The space around you gradually carries a quiet yet magnetic energy, causing the outside noise to naturally fall beneath your level of awareness. Nietzsche saw this as the peak of personal development, a person who not only escapes negative influences, but also becomes the stable center of the very world they create. In that world, every decision stems from will, every step has meaning, and every connection is formed from willingness, not from the need to avoid pain. Ultimately, the journey of keeping distance is not for you to live separated from the world, but for you to find the true world within yourself. When you are strong enough to stand alone, you are also steady enough to connect with others without losing your essence. Distance, then, is no longer a wall, but a stretch of sky, where you can breathe freely, see everything clearly, and choose what truly deserves to enter your life. Nietzsche once reminded that true freedom is the ability to say yes or no decisively, without being influenced by fear or desire. To achieve that, you need to train yourself as one tempers a steel blade, to withstand pressure, to pass through the trial by fire, and to be ready to remove the parts that no longer fit. So, start from today. Give yourself silent spaces to observe, to listen to the voice within, and to firmly say no to the things that make you smaller. Walk more slowly, but walk with clarity and self-mastery, because when you master your distance, you are also mastering your life. And then no one, nothing can shake you anymore.